What's going on YouTube? This is SG1 Sports and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our weekly series here, taking a look at the top 10 games from each week of the 2023 college football season. We're up to week 9. Week 9's not going to be that big of a week, honestly. It was actually hard to even come up with 10 games. There were really only about 5 really good games, I thought. But I still went through, picked out the 10 that I thought would be the biggest, and we'll start here at number 10. Purdue at Nebraska. You know, I don't know where these teams will be. I don't expect either team to really be a top 25 team. But if Wisconsin and Iowa and Minnesota wind up not being great this year, then the door is open in the Big Ten West, and Purdue or Nebraska could possibly sneak in there and make a run at the division. So this will be a big game if these two teams still have a chance to maybe make it into the Big Ten Championship. I don't really know at this point that we're going to be thinking that. But maybe, so we'll see. Again, Purdue, Nebraska, division game in the Big Ten West. Should be a good game. I think these teams will be pretty even. I think it will definitely be a close game. So we'll see. Purdue, Nebraska, not a huge game, but again, I had to come up with 10 games here. We'll go to number 9 now. Oregon State at Arizona. I feel like this one has a chance to be an upset. You look at Arizona. Games against Oregon State and UCLA, I feel like they're going to have a really good chance to pull off an upset in one or even both of those games. This is going to be a good Arizona team, a program on the rise. Oregon State's going to be good as well, though. So this is a pretty good game. Not necessarily a game that's going to decide who gets the Pac-12 championship or anything like that. But still, I think it's a big game in the Pac-12. Potentially a big upset here if Arizona can win it at home. That one here at number 9, Oregon State, Arizona. Moving on to number 8, Georgia, Florida rivalry. You know, it feels like Georgia's probably going to dominate this game. You don't really expect it to be all that close, but you never know. Again, it is a rivalry. We've seen some crazy things in this game in the past. Maybe Georgia's not as good as they were the last couple of years without Stetson Bennett. Maybe Florida's better than we expect. You know, Florida's going to play hard, even if they're struggling in the season. If they get to this game, they're still going to go out there and play really hard. And so we'll see. Rivalry game. I think it gives. That's really about the only reason this game is on the list here, number 8. But yes, Georgia versus Florida. Number 7, Pittsburgh at Notre Dame. Notre Dame has some tough games on the schedule, but they also have some sneaky games like this game, like NC State. Some games that could possibly trip them up. Playing at home, you like the Irish's chance in this game. Pittsburgh, how good are they going to be? Hard to say. I'm not really high on them, but I think they're going to be solid. So this is probably going to be a pretty close game, pretty exciting game. This should come down to the fourth quarter. Pitt at Notre Dame coming in at number 7. Let's go to number 6 now. South Carolina at Texas A&M. This could be a pretty big game. These teams could both be even top 25 teams at this point. We'll see. I think Texas A&M is going to have a pretty good year this year. They've got the talent to do it, that's for sure. South Carolina, not as much talent on the roster, but Shane Beamer's really got that program headed in the right direction, and they're playing really hard for him. So this is going to be a fun matchup. Again, possibly a top 25 matchup. And, you know, if Texas A&M loses this game, it could be a big-time loss for them at home. And it could be a rough loss, but a win for South Carolina could be huge. So this is actually a game that maybe you don't think it's going to be all that big, but I think it is a pretty big game for these two programs. South Carolina at Texas A&M here at number 6. Now let's get into the top 5 where the games get a little bit better. We start with Oklahoma at Kansas at number 5. I've talked about it a lot this offseason. I really feel like this Kansas team is going to be good this year, potentially in the top 25. Oklahoma, I think, is going to be much improved. Two really good offenses going at it here. Expect a shootout. Oklahoma probably has the advantage on defense, especially if you look at their defensive line, their pass rush. But you got a mobile quarterback for Kansas, so maybe that counters that. Just a lot of intriguing matchups in this game. I think it's going to be really fun, exciting. Could, again, potentially be a top 25 matchup here. Oklahoma at Kansas at number 5. And maybe a game that has Big 12 championship implications. I mean, I think Oklahoma's going to be in that race, and I think Kansas is a dark horse. They win this game, maybe they can get into that conversation. So we'll see. Oklahoma, Kansas, number 5. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. Number 4, Clemson at NC State. Clemson with a tough game here on the road. Tough place to play. You know, you look at their schedule, and they've got some big games at home. They've got Notre Dame at home. They've got Florida State at home. But they've also got some challenges on the road, and I think this is going to be one of their toughest road games this year. an NC State team that I don't expect to be great, but I think they're good enough to play with Clemson, especially at home, and make this a close game. So I expect a good one here between Clemson and NC State at number 4. Moving on to number 3, Tennessee at Kentucky in the big game in the SEC East. You know, last year the game was not close at all. Obviously, I expect Kentucky to play much better this time around. They'll be playing at home. And if Georgia doesn't win the SEC East, this game, and that's a big if, because I think everyone really expects Georgia to win the East, unless Tennessee does knock them off. But let's say Georgia winds up losing a couple of games, and they're not as good as we thought they were going to be. This is a game that could decide the SEC East, so this is a big one. Or maybe it decides who finishes second in the SEC East. Like I said, I think Kentucky will compete in this game. I don't expect a blowout like we got last year. So I think this is a pretty big game here. Tennessee, Kentucky at number 3. Number 2, Oregon at Utah. Huge game in the Pac-12. This is one that is going to have Pac-12 championship implications for sure. It's going to be you got that high-powered offense for Oregon versus more of a defensive, run-the-football type team in Utah. So a contrast in styles here. But like I said, this is going to go a long way towards determining who gets to the Pac-12 championship. You've got USC, you've got Washington, you've got Oregon and Utah. So anytime any of those teams play each other, it's going to be a huge game. And I think that's the case here with Oregon and Utah coming in at number 2. But number 1 is Ohio State and Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin has a legitimate chance to pull off an upset here, and would be a huge loss for Ohio State. They cannot afford to lose this game. You've already got Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan on the schedule. Odds are they're not going to win all 3 of those games. Maybe they do, but chances are that they probably lose one of those games. And then you lose to Wisconsin, there goes your playoff hope. So this is a huge, huge game for Ohio State. And for Wisconsin, I think there's a legitimate chance that they could be undefeated or sitting there with 1 loss going into this game. I really like this roster for Wisconsin. I think they're just better than everyone else in the Big Ten West. And they also have a schedule that is very manageable. So if they're sitting there with 1 loss or potentially undefeated, a win here over Ohio State, then all of a sudden Wisconsin is a serious playoff contender. And so this is a huge opportunity for them. Maybe they've lost a couple of games by this point, but I think at most they've lost 2 games, and they're probably in the top 25. So this is a huge game in the Big Ten. A lot on the line for Ohio State, a huge opportunity for Wisconsin, possibly playoff implications in this game. Maybe not as much as far as the Big Ten race goes, or maybe there is, because if Ohio State does lose another conference game, you lose this game, you're not going to the Big Ten championship more than likely. So this is a big one. Ohio State, Wisconsin. You could argue that Oregon, Utah is going to be a higher ranked matchup, but I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. Again, I'm really high on Wisconsin. I think they're going to be ranked at this point possibly pretty high. So that's my biggest game for Week 9. What are your thoughts on Week 9? Which games do you think are going to mean the most? Which ones are you most excited for? Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.